And thank you for tuning in to Chillcast. Rolling in with Chillcast.
All right, Brian, you want to start it off?
Welcome to Chillcast, the only cast where you chill.
You've been workshopping that one?
Yeah.
It's good.
Okay.
It's good. Hey guys, welcome to Chillcast. Today is episode 2 of the H series, where he imparts extremely large amounts of wisdom, and we maybe learn from it, possibly.
Maybe.
Don't do that. That might be dangerous.
So last time we talked about, our different college experiences.
50 years apart.
Yeah, it's a considerable amount of time difference. Right. So I feel like the best thing to do is kind of continue that conversation. Of course, this time Sam is not with us. Rest in peace. No.
He'll be all right.
He'll be fine. He'll be fine. But yeah, so...
Yeah, well, last time we were talking about what were the factors that influenced how we viewed our first days of college. And I explained a little bit about how the previous 4 years before I got to college included things like a man landing on the moon, a president resigning from office, Kent State, a lot of turmoil, Vietnam winding down, things like that. And so coming into school, I was seeing a very liberal approach to the culture, which I was not used to coming from a small mountain town, but how that shaped a lot of my changes in how I look at things, and obviously how you look at things 2 generations later. But that, times are not all that different now. It's just technology's different and the names are different, but it's still change. And you either figure out how to deal with the change, or you just kind of get left in the road trying to figure out what to do next.
Yeah. I feel like you can kind of see that happen in the reactions people have when they get to campus, if they're on campus. I've made friends in my classes that you can tell have been very sheltered, and they're still very much ingrained in how their parents instructed them to view the world. And that's not always a bad thing. Obviously, it's very much based on your opinion, but it's almost like when they are exposed to different ideas, it's almost like a violent exposure, because they're so blindsided and so shocked by certain things that it causes them to get into arguments, and it causes them to, just kind of, ignore people in certain friend groups and social situations. And you can tell they just don't have the, not patience, but the ability to kind of sit back and just let people explain why they think what they think. They're just so quick to cut them off, and they're so quick to that's not how we were raised. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're the newest of our college brethren.
Well, I think the only thing I've noticed on on opinion based things is I think I was in a class and someone made a joke, and at the time I was like, oh, I didn't really agree with that joke, but everyone else did, so I was just like, do I laugh? I don't know. So it was just it's very different, because you have to face different things that you thought you weren't going to face. Oh, this person is not saying something that I like, so it's just you have to go on with that and just learn how to deal with it and stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you grew up telling a lot of racist jokes.
Yeah,
so,
I know it's really bad.
So it must be weird, you know, being in a classroom where people are just telling normal knock-knock jokes and stuff. You're like, where's the edge, huh?
That's very true, and I'll tell you, the people that argue the loudest are the people who don't understand. I don't mean agree. Understand the other points of view. In other words, they really haven't been able to digest what other people, how they're explaining it, how they're coming from, what their mindset is. And so the reaction is to talk louder to get people to hear your point of view more than ever. And I don't care where you at. I mean, it could even be a baseball manager arguing with an umpire, right? He's going to keep louder and louder because he doesn't understand what the umpire just made the call out, safe, whatever. It's not being able to fit the other point of view into your mind structure. So I agree with Brian. It's you sit there and you're not sure whether you're supposed to laugh or whatever. I mean, 50 years ago we had our share of jokes. Most of them were foreign country jokes. We used to call them the Pollock jokes and things like that. But was it stereotypical? Yes. Did people laugh? Yes. Just like you laugh at Saturday Night Live or any other satirical skits. But, you know, is it bad to laugh? Well, if you can't laugh, this is going to be a short life.
Yeah. That reminds me, we were watching The Muppet Show on DVD. We have like the first few seasons.
Oh, yeah.
And there was this ongoing joke about how Fozzie was going to do this like foolproof joke that it always gets a laugh. It's the telephone pole bit is what they were calling it. Like it always gets a laugh. And he finally does it. And he's like pretending to be a telephone pole. And then he makes some sort of comment like, oh, I'm a telephone pole or something like, don't you want to know my name? And they're like, oh, what's your name? And he goes, and he says some stereotypical Polish name. And the joke is that he's a telephone pole, I guess. And we just sat there in silence. And like we're all looking around at each other like, was that supposed to be funny?
Or if it is funny, am I supposed to laugh?
Am I supposed to laugh at this moment? I don't know.
Yeah, that's very true.
This is one of the jokes that didn't age well. Like,
Yeah.
And we all looked at our mom like, is that what is that?
Explain this, please.
Explain this.
Yeah, well, it can be that way, but it's I mean, having a sense of humor is how you get through life. You got to find humor in almost everything, but not necessarily at the expense of other people, in front of other people. It's easy to joke with somebody, but sometimes joking at somebody can get out of hand, and that's what people really struggle with. And I get it. I mean, if you're in a crowd, I mean, just us, and if we start picking on Brian because of his hat and don't ever let up,
This guy.
yeah, the fedora man, and you know, but if you don't let up, eventually it gets to be
It's just bullying.
Yeah, it's just bullying in another form. So, but I don't think, and I can promise you, I didn't hear the word bullying in college. You know, there were pranksters, there were loud protesters and stuff, but I don't think I even heard the word bullying while I was in college. It just wasn't a term.
I feel like people have come to realize how far of a scope bullying can encompass. Like, you know, back then, maybe this one person is repeatedly berating you and verbally abusing you, but you're kind of just supposed to accept it because of the time period. But now we realize that mental health is a serious, very serious thing, very important thing. And so now the standards have changed. And, you know, I've had a lot of people in my family go, oh, you know, back in my day, you know, we used to hear this and just deal with it. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. But that's probably not the best thing for you mentally. And these same people agree that it's good to have, you know, good mental health, a good support system, but they also kind of rag on and brag about, yeah, you know, I just put up with all this horrible verbal abuse back then, and it's great. It's like, no, it wasn't good for you.
It wasn't good for you. Well, let me ask you this. Okay, so Brian, let's take a situation. You go to your favorite hamburger place and you order a double cheese with extra pickles, no onion, and you get your hamburger has no cheese and onion but no pickles on it, would you take the sandwich back and say this isn't what I ordered?
I mean, honestly, I think I would just eat it.
Okay.
Okay, because
so
it's nothing that I don't like on it.
But let's say it's stuff you don't like or might even be allergic to. The point is that I've learned that if something bothers me enough, then I should address it directly with the source of the problem, not just take it and let it fester and go on. But an example would be is if somebody is ragging on you about your hat, and that's the only thing I can think of. And I think I gave you your first one. But if and it's not in public, but it's like if it bothers you enough, could you step aside into a room with somebody and say, Phyllis, I really wish you wouldn't tease me about my hat in public. It's what I wear, and I just don't think it's fair for you to do that in public. Now, Phyllis has got to make a decision at this point and go, boy, you're a weenie, or I was just kidding, or say, well, pick something else to do.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't bother you enough to address it one-on-one, not in a crowd, one-on-one, then that just tells you a little bit about your personality. It's like the person that won't take the sandwich back. If you just keep taking it, it wears on you. And as you say, it builds up. It's not healthy. So I have learned in my 70 years that if it bothers me, I have to pick that moment to go tell that person or organization or whatever, one-on-one, not in public, not with an email. And all that. I have to go tell them. Yeah. And what are they going to say? If they go, God, I had no idea, or I apologize. Now if they go, hey, tough beans. Now I got some other decisions to make. Do I want to hang around these people? And then if somebody says, why don't you hang around with us anymore? I just don't enjoy it. Yeah. So it's tough. And I think people in groups, bands, sports teams, school organization, it doesn't matter what it is. There's always friction between one or two people, but it has to be addressed quickly. And I postponed a lot of that and procrastinated, but I found out later that the quicker I addressed it one-on-one, the better. But it's hard one-on-one. Yeah. So, you're in psychology. One-on-one's some of the hardest things to deal with.
I've talked with people, and a lot of what most people's hurdle to actually seeking out therapy is they don't want to tell a stranger their problems. And while I get that, I feel like that's almost the perfect situation for someone, because you don't really know this person. They can't tell anyone what you tell them. They're not supposed to. Not to put out that doubt, but like good therapists won't disclose that information to anyone. And as you're telling them what you want to tell them, you get to know them through your interactions and everything. And I feel like it's obviously supposed to be a gradual process. So while I do understand why it might be unnerving to tell a stranger your problems, depending on what's going on, it could be the perfect situation. I mean, it's kind of how it's supposed to be. Right. You wouldn't want someone to be your therapist because they have a lot of preconceived notions about you and everything like that.
And you about them.
That too. So, and then again, there is a place and time for you to vent to people you do know. Because sometimes you want to go, okay, now I just need you to say I'm right in every situation, make sure I win this argument in my head, whether that's one of your friends or the shampoo bottles in the shower when you're like, I won this argument. It's my time. But yeah.
It's always seen as a win-lose, and it's really not. I can remember one situation. A friend of mine 25 years ago asked me about a problem they were having with their neighbor and doing this and doing that. And I finally said, well, what did she say when you asked her about it? Oh, I couldn't ask her about it. And I said, then it doesn't bother you.
Yeah.
And she said, it bothers me a lot. And I said, then go ask her. And she called me like 2 days later and said, it was unbelievable. The problem went away immediately.
Oh.
And I said, well, that's most problems go that way.
Yeah.
If you just talk it out and do it directly. But it's a pain.
I saw a lot of that in like high school. Like people were like, oh, this person's doing this certain thing, and the easiest thing they could do is just say, hey, this really bothers me. But no, they just don't and let it build up. There's like a whole
arc.
A whole arc. Yes, that's exactly
the
what
drama
it is.
arc.
The drama arc, and then it goes away, and then you hear about it, and it's like, oh, whatever happened to that? And it's like, oh, that's fine. And it's like, what?
It's like they have a little like they got a paper cut.
Yeah.
And instead of putting like peroxide or something on it, they're like, I'm just gonna put it in the ground, in the dirt.
Yeah.
Maybe put on some
Shake hands with somebody.
Shake hands, let it spread.
Go to the bathroom. Don't wash my hands.
Yeah. I think I was fortunate. I didn't experience a lot of high school drama just because of the people I associated with. I overheard some drama, and sometimes it was fun to like listen in, blindly and just feel like, oh, okay, this is
as long as it's not me, it's
yeah,
good.
yeah, this is what people are dealing with. But as far as letting a problem fester, I was listening to another podcast, and these two roommates were kind of joke arguing about it, but this one guy was like, oh yeah, so I noticed that you left a bunch of dishes in the sink, and some friends of ours are coming over to our apartment to bake later, and now they have to deal with all your dishes. And the other guy's like, okay, I'm sorry, I'm gonna Venmo them a bunch of money so they can buy the ingredients, to kind of make up for it. Like I'll pay for the ingredients they're gonna bake with and everything. And then he goes, wait a second, hold on, I just realized, sure, I left my dishes out, but you left a bunch of empty yogurt cups over there on the counter this morning. And he said, yes, I did. And I'm glad you noticed, because this is me declaring war. If you're not going to do your dishes, I'm putting my yogurt cups over here. It's a sign. It's a sign for you.
Yeah.
And they're obviously kind of they're joking about it, but people do that where they have that like subtle like, okay, I'm going to do some warfare here, and I'm not going to clean up, and I'm going to do this to try to get them to realize this without just talking to them.
Passive aggressive.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I understand. So, but I'll take it all back to somebody. I mean, you want to go into being a counselor, but I could imagine that if someone came in and said, I'm having this problem with a certain person, you might say, well, have you talked to them about it? Or what did they say when you mentioned it? And then immediately it's going to come back, well, I've never mentioned it to them.
Yeah.
And so then you have to get somebody to put a value on how important is this to you. If it's very important, I would have thought you would have gone to them. Now, some people are just, they're afraid, but all it takes is one good result to show how that can work out. And there'll be exceptions, but even with my dad, I remember we got into it over one time about he would not pronounce my roommate's last name correctly. It was like his little trigger to just pretend like he didn't remember Pfister's last name. He'd call him Feaster. Finally one day I said, Dad, you must have a bunch of friends named Feaster. I don't know anybody named Feaster. Oh, he says, I mean Pfister. And it's like, as soon as I said to him, I'm tired of the joke, and he never said it again. It was like his little thing that we had to go through to talk about college.
Yeah.
So you can do it with parents too. There's different things with your parents' life that this is okay for them to be authoritative on, but don't pick on me on these things because I feel like I've aged, or matured and you haven't seen what I've seen in this venue. And that's true. I mean, if you're off at college, they don't know what you're seeing. Working in a job, they don't see exactly what you see. They can offer input, but they certainly can't make the call because they don't have all the information unless you give it to them. So
Yeah.
I think that is one major issue, is that I was thinking about how it may be easier to approach a friend you have an issue with, or maybe an enemy that you have an issue with, than like an authority figure that like your parents or relatives, because then that fear is kind of it's not about confrontation. It's about, well, they are kind of in charge of me in some way, even though I'm technically kind of out of the house and I'm at this age, I should be more independent. They still can say things that can really hurt, and they can still, kind of bend your words depending on what you say. And that is especially frightening when you're trying to, if the problem you have is with a parent or authority figure, they're in a place of power technically, and so it's kind of a hard dynamic.
Right. Well, one thing we used to talk about at school and even on into work was, and it's never two columns of people, but there were people that would follow rules and people who saw them as a guideline on occasion, And we used to talk about how uncomfortable you could get with somebody that was too straight and narrow, or somebody that bent the rules or, violated the rules all the time. And you wondered how that was going to affect your future, your grade, your resume, whatever. But one of the things we dealt with at North Carolina that I was going to ask you guys about tonight was we had an honor code that you signed when you became a student. And one of the stipulations, other than I'm not going to cheat, I'm going to follow all the rules and regulations of the university community, but one of them was, I will report anyone I see cheating in the classroom. Now, I asked one time how many reports were there last year, and there were none. All right, now what are the odds that on a campus of 20,000 plus students that there wasn't one incident of cheating of some kind seen? And some of the protest era where I am in the 70s, people were saying it is not my responsibility to report somebody I see cheating because I don't know how that's going to blow back on me. That's your responsibility, university, to find that person cheating. Of course, the university said, if you're competing with that student for the next spot in the law school or dental school or something, I would think that would be of interest to you. If you thought they were cheating or knew they were cheating. And I don't know, how do you guys feel about that? You guys are at the same school. Do you have an honor code like that, or?
I mean, we do have an honor code. There's a handbook and everything. There's the academic honesty policy that they're really big on, and they always talk about in emails and everything. And they do take it seriously. They put their foot down with that. Just recently, this one student was accused of using AI to generate her papers. And it turned out all she was using was Grammarly, which isn't allowed. It was featured on the website, the UNG website. Like, you can use Grammarly to make suggestions, just like, even your phone makes suggestions for text, like, helping with the spelling and stuff like that.
I see it all the time in email.
Yeah.
And so it's not like you're not cheating; it's still your work. But for some reason, their AI checker flagged that as cheating, and the professor wouldn't back down, and so they suspended her for a semester. That she got academic probation or something like that. And a lot of people were on her side, really frustrated about it. And so Grammarly ended up teaming up with her, the company, and they're doing promotional stuff now. So it ended up for the best, but they do take it seriously is what I'm trying to say with that.
But what do you think the role of you is with if you think someone is hedging or cheating? Is that your responsibility?
I would say so.
Because it's so rare, like at least from like of the classes I've taken, like anytime we're doing like a test, we're just all in the classroom and we just pencil, paper, and we're just taking it. And there's nothing, like the teacher's in there the whole time, and it's just the paper and the pencil, and there's nothing for us to see.
Right.
And so even if we saw someone cheating, I mean, if I knew that it was just wrong because, I guess I would report it. But if it's just like it's just very rare. I don't.
Well, how about if you were, you got to turn in a paper for one of your English classes, and somebody one night says, "Yeah, I'm already done. I borrowed my brother's from. He went to UGA and he had an essay on a similar subject. I'm just using the paper he wrote." Would you report it? Probably not.
Probably.
That's the thing.
But how do you
Where do you draw the line?
where do you draw the line?
Because I'm trying to think about how I would actually react. I would be honestly, I'd probably be like, because if I'm the only person that he's told that to, and then all of a sudden he gets flagged and he gets like, oh, you need to see the professor. It's pretty obvious who reported him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So if it was like more a way for it to be anonymous, like he was just telling everyone. I mean, if he told everyone, then more than likely he wouldn't even be surprised that he got caught.
Yeah.
That's why.
Or would you tell? I mean, he may not even know you heard him say it. Would you tell a professor, you need to look at Mike's essay a little bit? It sounds kind of familiar.
Show up in a trench coat.
Well,
I want to check this out.
I remember one of my dorm mates talking to a guy one time. He said he thought he was turning in, and granted, when I was there, plagiarism meant you literally found a copy of a paper that had already been written and you copied it. There's nothing online. There's like that. And one guy says, "Well, I hope you're not going to be my doctor if I find out you're doing anything you can to get the grades to get into to med school." He says, "Because I don't know what corners you're cutting."
Yeah.
So
people are making jokes now about it's the future, and you're at the hospital and your doctor is one of your fellow students, and they cheated.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, great. Is there anybody else? Like, I think the actual meme template is like, your doctor is that friend who used ChatGPT for med school.
Yeah. Well, that would be similar. So,
yeah,
used to test, but no. And then that got me thinking a little bit about the way they dealt on campus about crime, and the two things in crime. Well, there were three areas. One was just I call it sexual assault, and that kind of took its own life in terms of how that got dealt with on campus, and it was pretty much dismissal if you were found out. But the other two were theft from dorm rooms and things like that, and then of course drug traffic was the big concern. And I think I talked a little bit about on the last time about my peripheral involvement with somebody in that line of work, and how you have to be very careful on some of the connections. But crime, theft out of dorm rooms, and I was talking to a friend of mine that's was in the hospital last week, and I kept trying to get a text through to him. It turned out his wife took his phone home because the hospital says you need to take it home because people here at the hospital steal your phones. I'm like, that's pretty blatant, and they said, we just can't be responsible for personal items in your room. People take them. And, well, aren't they all employees? Well, yeah, but we've got no way of tracking that down. And then that morphed into an article I saw last week about a gentleman in New York State San Francisco, that had been to jail over, I think it was 115 times for the same crime. His crime was he would go to a nice restaurant, nicely dressed, have dinner for one, something pretty good, might be $50, $80, $100 for the whole bill, order wine, and then he would inform the waiter, I have no intention of paying for this, and I can't pay for this. I have no money.
Oh.
And he was habitual, and he'd go before a judge, and the judge would sentence him to anywhere from 30 to 90 days. And he would ask his lawyer, take the 90 days. I'm not going to plead this out. Well, it turned out he said, I'm much safer going to jail and having a dry bed and 3 meals a day, plus the one good meal I eat about every 30 or 90 days. But the question in the article of the opinion op-ed was, should this guy go to jail or should he be forced to stay out of jail? When is going to jail the wrong punishment? Have you run into any things like that? Now, just before I'll help you think through this. If someone is committed I don't care if it's a misdemeanor or a felony, they can do community service.
Yeah.
All right. Boy, if you really want to embarrass somebody, put the I'm a DUI convict and I'm picking up trash on the highway in this orange vest on Saturday and Sunday mornings for the next 6 months. Well, some people consider that cruel and unusual punishment because now they're being out in the public and being seen. Maybe they should go to jail. Well, they've got a good lawyer that got them off of going to jail time. But they say this is humiliating, picking up trash. Mm-hmm. Should it be humiliating to be good punishment?
That's the thing. I mean, I guess obviously if you denied this man jail and then made him do community service, it would defeat his whole plan.
Yeah.
He wouldn't get to live there and he wouldn't get the 3 meals a day that he wants. And it probably would deter him from doing it again.
He's going to do it again.
You think he'd try to do it again or you get a different judge?
He's done it 115 times.
So why is it that no one's ever went, okay, community service this time?
Does he go to the same restaurant?
No.
Okay.
He floats around and he does it different styles. He never goes to the very top shelf, never orders the most expensive, but it's like he goes into a medium-sized steakhouse or Italian restaurant and dresses as nice as he can with his Goodwill suit and whatnot. But he's played the game, and
they could just do like a not a wanted poster, but give a poster to all the restaurants, and it's if you see this guy, don't let him walk in.
Yeah, but what should the punishment be? Yeah, and this is not the only crime. There are lots of crimes like this where, the putting someone in jail doesn't reform them, and they're going to be out. It's not a serious crime.
He's not doing anything evil.
A lot of restaurants won't even make push charge. They just get out of here. Now, in my time, they used to say you're going to wash dishes.
That's what
tonight.
I always heard.
Yeah,
washing dishes. Yeah.
But what if he's fine with washing dishes?
Yeah, but what if he says, I want to go to jail. Arrest me. Call the cops.
Call the cops.
Then don't call the cops.
Well, he might even call the cops himself.
Guys.
Can I borrow your cell phone just a minute? We have a guy that's eating for free here, and we need you to come. What's he look like? Well, let's see. He looks like...
Pretty handsome guy.
Yeah.
Honestly, won't be able to get to him with all the girls crowding around him. He's really handsome.
Yeah.
He does really well. He looks good in that suit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'd love to be him.
Get off the phone.
Well, I had a young man that was in my homeroom in high school who eventually went to college at the same place your grandmother went. And he was arrested 4 or 5 times for what we call kiting checks. Kiting a check means where you have more than one account and you write a check to one account for a certain amount and write check from that one, and you try to make the banks think there's more money in one of the accounts than the other. There's only the same amount of money, but he would kite these checks and then, appeared to have money. He got in trouble for that, and then he started writing checks out of his roommate's checkbook,
Oh my gosh.
and which was my friend Mark. Remember, passed away a year ago. And so here's a guy that is brilliant. He's in college. His father's an attorney. He's got money, but he just can't help himself. He's looking for money that he doesn't have, and that's what it is. How do you punish that guy?
I mean, I guess I assume the typical punishment would be jail for that, right?
Well, the first thing would happen is your attorney, which in this case would be his father, would plead with the person filing the complaint, which would be like his roommate or the banks, and say, if we pay back the money, we drop the charges. Well, for them to press the charges costs more money than the $50 check he wrote or the $100. We're not talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're talking like enough to buy a pair of shoes or something like that. And now it wouldn't have quite the problem. It'd be like your credit card goes through, and then the guy is still responsible for his credit card. But in this case, you could pay off the debt and pay off the bad check or the kited check and say, okay, are y'all good? And they might say, yeah, I got my money back. I'm fine. Just don't do it again. But has he learned anything?
No.
Probably not. So again, it's how do you exact justice on that? Is it time?
I mean, it's definitely not one size fits all, because there are people who make a career out of going to jail or prison, I guess. What they do is they are the people that smuggle things in, and they commit like the lowest level felony they need to get into jail for a long period of time,
Right.
and then they smuggle things in a certain way and divvy it out, and then make a bunch of money in jail, like a lot of money, and then they get let out, and then they commit another crime to get in, and
Right.
they're the Amazon or
Right.
UPS of
it's the
prison.
distribution system.
Yeah.
And it's hard. And short of having solitary confinement for every prisoner, you're always going to have some issue like that. If you make the food too good, they'll stay. If you make the beds too comfortable, they'll stay. It used to be the big joke was when you went to prison, you made license plates. You had a job inside the prison. You worked 8 hours a day for 5 cents an hour. Just something to build up credit at the commissary there in the prison. But now they consider work in prisons to be inhumane.
I mean, personally, I do think it's kind of, depending on the charge and stuff, it is kind of slavery. I mean, the beds that I sleep on at the dorms are made from prisoners, or made by prisoners. And I mean, I don't know. Personally, I feel like it's a weird loophole that the government has where they can legally make people do slave labor because they're imprisoned. Because that's the loophole of, like, I believe it's the 13th Amendment. People cannot be enslaved unless they are prisoners. And so that's how it's legal in today's world. I feel like there should still be, fair wages even within prison. I mean, because the prison is supposed to be built on rehabilitation, but it does, like, as we've discussed, it's not really built to rehabilitate.
Well,
not in the best way.
Yeah, I've heard one time where you pay minimum wage, for whether they're working on road crews or license plates or down in Tallahassee, I used to call them the prison system there. They made all the soaps and detergents and shampoos and everything that were used in the state prison system, and we sold some chemicals that went into that. And I'm like, well, that's pretty clever. You know, you're going to use it rather than buy it on the outside, make it yourself. And of course, they used prison labor to do that. I know another one down in Columbus, Georgia. The prison there helped manage the public golf course owned by the city. And it took about 30 employees to run the mowers and stuff. And we talked to them out there. My uncle used to play there. And, you know, they got paid something. But the thing was, okay, if you're providing them a job and you're paying them fair, well, then do they need to pay for their lodging and their food? Okay, there's a trade-off there, right? You know, if you're working for minimum wage and you're in college or just out of college, you're trying to earn enough to pay your way. And you know, if you've got somebody incarcerated or they're there serving time, and I mean, it is a penalty, but you could pay them something or pay it and have it available when they leave under, you know, they're honorably discharged from the prison, you know, kind of thing. But yeah, now some of the old movies depict they're out there working road crews, you know, 12, 14 hours a day, and they don't pay them anything and barely feed them. I'm sure there's some of that too, or at least it used to be. But right now they really don't want them to work. They say that seems unfair to make a prisoner work.
Well, I mean, I haven't been to jail, but I've heard that.
We can work on that. I mean.
Yeah,
I've
do
been
it.
to jail.
That's our next vlog.
Yep. Hey guys, I just got out of jail.
We commit the lowest level felony
Yeah.
to get in, and then, you know, maybe bring some things in.
Make it through the night.
Today we're going to jail.
I just lost my train of thought.
You two
Whether
do
to
that
pay
anyway.
him or not.
Oh, well, you know, if the whole point, you know, obviously there's, you know, there are different levels of crimes. There's like, you know, violent crime and everything, and then you know, death penalty and all that stuff. But like, for like, I don't know, I guess I'll say typical crimes, like, you know, normal crimes. The whole point is supposed, like, that it's supposed to be a penalty. You know, they go to jail, that's the penalty. But it's supposed to rehabilitate these people so that when they're released, they can go back as productive members of society, right? That's the whole basic idea. But that doesn't make the prison money. The prison industrial complex makes money when they have prisoners coming back, return customers.
Right. They're repeat business.
So,
and that's why it's privatized for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they try to keep the cost down, but repeat business is key.
They're taking advantage of a vulnerable population. Yes, they're prisoners. They're there against their will. They have to serve time. They're supposed to be bent on getting better and being released. But then again, that doesn't make them money. So it's not structured or built or intentionally made to get them back out in a healthy manner. And there's also really frustrating restrictions when it comes to probation. Obviously, there's within reason there are certain things that have to be in place. But I saw a commercial, like a campaign, you know, for like making a change to certain restrictions, and it showed like a mom trying to get medicine for her sick kid, like cough syrup, and she has to go to this she gets out of work and she has to get to this Rite Aid or something, and it's almost past her curfew, but the reason she's late is because she has to get medicine. But then if she's late, then that's like a ping on her record, and then she gets penalized for that, and that just seems unfair.
Well,
She's trying to make.
There's all kinds of exceptions, and it's hard to deal with them. But you know, the whole. Even if you're thinking about two children that you're raising and they're pitching a fit, you try to punish them by turning the TV off. They get louder. Eventually, you go, "Fine, turn the TV on." You know. But if you were to reward one of them and not the other one, and the other one does quiet down, and the other one's like, "Well, that's unfair." You rewarded them. Would they act more like that and start behaving better, or would they behave worse? and go the other direction because they feel like they were jilted. And I see this a lot as a coach where you have disruptors and you try to figure out how to deal with this disruptor, and you can sit them down or ostracize them a moment or so. But I find that if there's some way you praise the one sitting next to them for doing something even halfway good, they tend to behave better. But it doesn't always work. I mean, some people just, they ain't gonna do what you say, and you can't make me. You can just see them. You can just see them. You can't make me be good. Well, I mean, you mentioned Rite Aid. I mean, you got drugstores closing all over the country because of theft. That they can't deal with the current level of shoplifting or blatant thievery because they're not allowed to prosecute people that don't steal at least $1,000 worth of stuff. And so people have all the stuff behind the glass now and the plastic, and got to unlock to get to the toothpaste and stuff like that. And it sounds ridiculous, but even hardware stores and stuff are doing that because they cannot get people to prosecute low-level theft. And there's people that do need stuff, and this is the only way they think they can get it and provide. But on the other hand, it's just like it's going to raise the price for everybody else, right? If 5% of your goods go out as stolen, then you got to raise the price 5 or 6% on everything else to cover it, right? It's not easy, and I know that was a lot of the political discussion going into elections this year was how do you deal with crime if you can't punish people for the crimes, or we're going to get tough on crime, or there's plenty of laws on the books. A lot of businesses are just saying it's kind of hard. I'm going to close some stores down. I'm going to tighten up the reins inside, and it's going to be less comfortable. And now people don't want to shop at my store; they're going to Amazon. Okay, I mean it's tough, and I am amazed the number of things that are behind locked doors and glass now. And like I said, a hardware store, and you're like, sheesh.
Oh yeah, I just unlock this for you. Okay, which Lego set you want?
I just want some drill bits. I need some drill bits. But it's the whole crime and punishment thing is, we'd be great if everybody followed the rule. We're talking about the rule followers, and there's some that just say, I'm going to follow them sometimes.
Have you ever witnessed? Because you mentioned Amazon. Have you ever witnessed like a big chain move into a town and then a bunch of small places just have to shut down because they can't compete?
Well, I grew up in a small town, and I remember when the first fast food restaurant that came in was a Hardee's. And I think they fought it pretty hard because there were several mom and pop restaurants and a couple of finer dining places. But the guy that I worked for at a restaurant that was one of the 2 sit-down restaurants in town, he told me, he said, that's going to be good for my business. And I was like, golly, I mean, I know a lot of my friends, they're going to go there and get their hamburgers because they're about half price. He says, but they'll do that, and their parents will do that, and then they'll get used to eating out, and then they'll say, but I don't want to eat there every night, and they'll come over here, and I've got a big menu. And it was pretty much right. The presence of restaurants can enhance the dining experience. In other words, people start going out, and nicer restaurants can open up. What I did see, though, there was, Lowe's and Walmart came into town, and there was doom and gloom predicted right off the bat. And it really didn't work out like that. Now, there were some stores that needed to reinvent themselves anyway. They'd been operating for literally 100 years. the same old way, and they found out that people maybe didn't want to try to find a parking space on Main Street and go into the store and look through your limited inventory. And if you opened up a bigger store and someplace where there was some parking or expanded, now it's fun. And I mean, our little town is thriving, as far as town goes. I mean, you can't afford to buy a house there because everybody wants to move there. And it's not because everybody shut down because Walmart and Lowe's came in with their big boxes. It came in and made people transition into better ways of running their business. And what is my business? And more restaurants than ever. The hardware and building business, which you'd think Lowe's would have stolen, everybody else is doing great. I mean, it's fabulous.
It's like, because when like tourists go there, they don't go there to go to Wendy's. They go there to go, oh, look at this shop that has been here for like 70 years or something like
Great
that.
point, Brian. Yeah. I mean, the little Ace Hardware there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kids went to the same school I did that run that place. And people go through there because it's got the old creaky hard floor, and you can buy 14 kinds of bird seed there, but you can also buy a left-handed widget tightener that you can't buy at Lowe's. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the experience people want to get. But it is the big boxes make people evaluate their businesses, and you can fall asleep. I mean, there's no question. Now, if I owned a little mom and pop grocery store and Publix or Ingles or Kroger opened up next to me, I got a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the buying power. But at the same time, the reason, I mean, my property's going to be worth more. Mm-hmm. If they came in, it's going to be worth. I may not be in the grocery business anymore.
Yeah.
I may find myself in the golf business or in something else. Yeah. So most smart people figure out how to make it work. Yeah. It just does. I saw my grandparents go from being in the dairy business, being in the trucking business, to going into the dairy business, to opening up retail dairy, to selling that and going into the restaurant business. I mean, all in a period of 20 years, and that they were well known because they made those transitions, and you just can't be married to one idea.
I knew about the restaurant. I did not know about the dairy.
Yeah, when I first got to know my grandparents at obviously very early age, and keep in mind that this grandfather died when he was 50, and I was probably 6 or 7 when he passed away. But he had used to be what they call a produce driver. He would take a truck to like Indiana or Iowa or Florida, whatever, and whatever was the seasonal or regional crop or vegetable, fruit, fish, whatever, he would pick up, and then he would haul back to Montgomery, Alabama, and then he would go back, haul, and he would bring into like a farmer's market. And he decided that one of the things that seemed to be stable was the dairy industry, and so he ended up buying property and cows and milking equipment. And then World War II came in, and he actually paid vendors like his doctor, maybe to have a house built. He paid in milk and cream and stuff like that. And you had coupons. The more butterfat that was in your product, in other words, like heavy cream would be very expensive, whereas the equivalent of 2% milk would be less expensive because it doesn't have much butterfat in it. You actually were limited on how much content you could buy during the war. Well, he could trade stuff to get other things with milk. And so the dairy business kind of got them through World War II, and he served also, and His flag is in the other room in there. But he got out of the service and had started doing all this stuff. And he decided to go into selling milk, which turned out to, he enjoyed cooking a little bit, and he just converted it to a restaurant there. And that was just, that was in the 1950s, late 40s, early 50s. And so your great-grandmother had to work in the restaurant as a waitress, and so did her sisters and all that stuff. But we still have a few artifacts from there.
That's so cool.
It's but you just don't hear much about that anymore.
Yeah.
I watched a show called The Bear. I've talked about it probably a billion times, but it's about a guy running a restaurant.
Okay.
I always say it's a cooking show, but then I realize that doesn't sound right because people think I'm talking about like the British Bake Off. But I start watching that show and I'm like, you know what? I kind of want to run a restaurant. This would be so cool. And then I see certain episodes that explain why most people don't run a restaurant. And I'm like, never mind.
Yeah.
It just it's a lot to handle, and it can destroy you if you don't have the means and ability and mainly the financial resources.
You're
that
also
you to do
surrounded by comedians. Oh wait, no, that's just that show.
It's just that show, yeah.
Just that show.
Well, where he was, you're in the heart of segregation too. And I tell the story about when I was younger than Clyde, so I was probably 6 or 7, and we were picking up my mom at the restaurant, and it's about noon, and a big construction truck pulls in, and there's workers sitting in the back, and a guy who was white jumped out of the front seat and ran in, and then he came out carrying this gigantic box of to-go orders, and he's passing them out in the truck to all the guys in the back who are all black. And I said something to my father I said, man, that was mean. One of those guys should have gone in here and helped him carry all that out. And he says, well, they can't go in there. And that's why. He says, because coloreds aren't allowed in there. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, yeah, if you're black, you can't go in there. And I said, well, I know Olive and I know Juanita works in there. Well, they work there. They're in the back. And I said, well, how do they know they can't go in? He said, well, that sign on the front door. Well, the sign on the screen doors that opened to go in where it said Colonial Bread. And they were advertising, and they had a stainless steel handle over them. But at the top it said white only. And I thought they only served white bread.
Oh.
But he says, no, they can't go in. And he says, that's the case in a lot of restaurants. And then my dad's trying to, sheepishly explain what segregation is. I'd never heard of it. And I said, well, I don't get it. And he says, well, we have to have the black kids have a different school. And I said, where is it? And he says, well, it's over. So I said, no. And I said, is it nice? And he didn't answer that one. But so that was my first exposure to running a restaurant. And so I'm sitting here asking questions about my grandfather. Why is he segregating it? He says he's segregating it to have business. If he didn't, he wouldn't have much business. And I said, so is he mean? And he says, quite the opposite. He says, he built a house for the people that work there down behind the restaurant. He pays them. He gives them all their food. And he says he'd give them the shirt off his back. But to run his restaurant, he has to segregate his restaurant. And you wonder how much of that was a real learning curve for me. And I know my dad had a hard time explaining it. And he went from being a Southern segregationalist just because that's the way he was raised. By the time he was in his 50s, he was like, man, we were idiots.
Yeah.
He really, had a complete change of heart on what had gone on. I think he'd have done reparations if he if he could have. But he used to talk about schools like that and what it was like growing up down there. And to me, I didn't grow up in the deep South. I grew up in the mountains of North Carolina, and when we moved there in 1963, the water fountains were white and colored. Restrooms were the same. And people said, "You've never seen that?" I said, "No, I came from Indiana." Well, he says, "We didn't have any colored people in Indiana." And I said, "I guess we did. I mean, I never saw any." Where I was, it was just a Midwestern farm town, and it never occurred to me there were people of different colors. It just never occurred to me.
I think it's interesting, the conversation between you and your dad really showcases that racism is taught. Because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense, but here your dad is trying to explain it to you, and you're asking very appropriate questions like, why? Why are they separate? And he's going, because
it just has always been that way.
Yeah, and so
and his parents who were, and this would have been my grandmother, and then her sister Aunt Sue, who was Lutheran minister's wife. I mean, that's just the way it grew. Then I found out that the other house on the property that my dad had was a house they built and gave to a black family. I'm like, so you're willing to take care of them, but you can't be seen with them?
It's illogical. It doesn't make any sense. But at that time, people were like, "Nope, yeah, that makes sense." And here they are trying to explain it, and they run into the same issue of, well, actually, no, this doesn't make any sense, but we say it does, and so therefore it is.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it was. By the time I got to North Carolina in 1963, there was still segregation. It ended while I was by the time I got to 6th grade, it had ended, and all the schools were totally integrated. And good for me, I got to meet a lot of people I wouldn't have met otherwise, and have good memories with. I played basketball with several, and ran track with some, and I mean, we just joshed around.
Yeah, I think, it's an important thing that we talk about this time frame in history. But what's encouraging is that it'll become more distant and more distant. And then people will eventually be like, I think that happened, but why would that happen? Eventually it'll be a distant, like a rumor, that concept. I mean, today there's still, obviously it's not, racism's not gone. It's kind of just changed forms. It's become more systemic. It's within systems and within businesses, and it's not like, in your face, like, okay, there is some violence out there, obviously, that's blatant acts of racism, but for the most part nowadays it's kind of disguised, and it's subtle, and it's in certain practices, like certain hiring practices and certain policies that don't outwardly say be racist to this group or that group. It just happens because of how it's structured. But I think this is a good place to end the podcast.
Well, but let me ask you this though: the way the communications are these days with internet and social media, the incidents of racism are reported pretty vividly, and I still have a concern that while the number or percentage of incidents has gone way down, that in the minds of many it's still exactly like it was because they see so much media attention to those incidents, whether it's a riot or a shooting or crime statistics or whatever. And it's going to be very difficult without the silent majority promoting what's good out there, because the bad gets reported real quick. And that's what, and let's face it, on the news, the mantra is, if it bleeds, it leads. In other words, the worse the news, that's what's going to be first on. And so there's a challenge out there to to show the progress. And I know there's progress, but it's gonna be hard to prove it just based on the hits on the news. So I think we all have to talk positively about and demonstrate what's good out there. But
I think, the solution, my new word I just invented, delusion. The solution lies somewhere in making it more profitable to focus on good news.
Yeah.
Because media companies are focused on profit. Sadly, it's really not much of a moral thing. Now, I would say that the individual creators and smaller studios that make certain shows and stuff, like, they have, a purpose. They have something.
And indies and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, like they have something they want to get across in their music or their cartoons or their shows, their scripts. But they know how to talk to the companies. It's kind of like they're having to talk to their parents. Like, they know how to talk to them to get their show to air, because, it'll make you money, but we also get to do good.
Yeah.
But we make sure we only tell you about the money part.
Right.
So if we collectively find a way to get, news hosts to put pressure on, or newscasters, I should say, to put pressure on the larger company to promote certain stories over other stories, or at least get a more sheer amount of positivity in there, that's where that'll change. It's all about money. And people who have a good agenda to kind of guide the company to continue making money,
right?
While they can do what they want.
I follow you.
Yeah.
So
But
well, it's good to be with you guys again. Glad y'all are enjoying being roommates.
Yeah.
I hope you are anyway.
Yeah, he doesn't smoke as much now that we're in the same room.
I was gonna say, now, do you have problems? Do you talk to each other directly? And
we do communicate pretty well.
Yep. No, we only communicate when we do the podcast.
This is our only way of talking. It's been really good. It's a lot easier to kind of adjust to rooming with him because we've shared a room before and we live together most of the time. I feel more comfortable just kind of being myself in that small of a room with a family member. And we obviously, kind of already get along and we are into the same thing. So rooming together it's just been really easy. Yeah. It's the least stressful thing in my life right now.
Well, I don't know if I told you, I had lunch with my college roommate on last Wednesday. He turned 70 like I am last Thursday. Excuse me. We did it on Thursday. And we were talking about, I told him you were rooming together. And he had met you guys just when we had the music thing. But we were talking about that we couldn't recall a single incident where we wished we hadn't been roommates. Whether I don't know, I guess it's our interests, and he was a little more serious student than I was for sure, but we got along well, and we was talking about how that shaped 50 years for us. We call each other all the time, and I know you guys will because you're brothers. But,
that's the hope.
But just having somebody you can fall back on. I mean, I know him 2 years longer than I've known Donna, so it's a long time. So anyway, thanks for having me in.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. We're already making the plans for part 3. I'm thinking some fireworks maybe, or something extravagant.
Yeah. Well, this is my bailiwick. I like golf, both the present and the history. You have Sam Snead. You have a picture over here it's got Bobby Jones and some of his cohorts at Augusta National in 1946. This game goes on, and we'll talk about why these clubs all look the same color next time. They're not the same.
So you want me to end it off too?
Yeah, you ended off with your prepared script.
Okay. Thank you for coming in to Chillcast. We'll be with you next time. See you there.
Was that your impression of Steve Bloom?
No.
It's his impression of him.
I'm Steve Bloom. Hello.
That was even better.
Okay.